Good evening. Tonight, as I told you in the message that I sent on the WhatsApp group chat, told you that I was going to start about Megilat Ruth. I don't know how much we're going to cover. I'm going to try first and give you the main points of the Megillah. There is a lot to learn from Megillat Ruth, and Bezat Hashem, we'll see what we're going to cover. So, the story happened during the period of the Shoftim. We have the Chamisha Chumshe Torah, the 5 books of Torah. After that, we have Yehoshua. That's the leader who took Ben Israel into Eretz Israel, and he fought against 31 kings. After his death, then we have the period of the Shoftim, the judges. So the story of Ruth happened during the period of the Shoftim, of the judges. The story happened during the time that Boaz, he is also known as Yivtzan, he was the head judge, the chief judge in Bethlehem. And actually, Shmuel Hanavi is the one who wrote down Megillat Ruth. He wrote it down from Nevuah, which is prophecy. He didn't just make it up. And he actually, Shmuel al-Navi, lived right after the period of the Shoftim. Shmuel, so let's see for a moment, let's try and find out who was Shmuel. Shmuel is the one who anointed David HaMelech as the king. He also anointed first Shaul, the first king, who was from Shevet Binyamin, from the tribe of Binyamin, and then he also anointed David as the king. And David was from the tribe of Yehuda. Shmuel was a very great tzaddik. Chachamim teach us that, and this is actually what we say in Tehillim, Ushmuel bekor'e shemo, that actually if we would put Shmuel on one side of the scales, and then we would put Moshe and Aaron on the other side of the scales would be equal. So you can imagine the greatness of Shmuel. Shmuel, his greatness was because all his life, all he did was to travel all over Eretz Israel, just like his father, Elkanah. He would travel all around Eretz Israel, and he would judge the people. His father did not judge the people, but Shmuel did. And he would judge, he would teach Torah, and he was traveling his entire life. That's all he did. And that's where his greatness was, that he made himself available to every single person, every Jew in Eretz Israel. So now we come to our question. Okay, very nice. We know that Shmuel wrote the Megillah, and we know the time period. And so what's the purpose of learning the story of Ruth? Okay, so there are a few reasons. Number one is for us to know the origins of David HaMelech. David HaMelech, his great-grandmother was Ruth HaMoaviyah, Ruth. And her life was not easy to become a Jew, to convert. She converted, but it was far from being easy. As a reward, Hashem granted her a great-grandson as David. First of all, her own son was a tzaddik. Then the grandson, Yishai. Oved was the son of Ruth. Then Yishai was a father of David, who was also a very great tzaddik, and he is among the 7 people who went alive to Gan Eden. And then David HaMelech. And from David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech, and then Mashiach. This is the reward Hashem kept for Ruth HaMoaviyah, for converting and really, really changing her life completely. And the second reason was to teach us about the rewards that Hashem keeps for those who practice kindness. Because we know that Ruth was, she did a lot of kindness with her mother-in-law, with the people around her. She did a lot of kindness. Very, very kind. That's why actually in English, when you want to say someone is cruel, has no kindness at all, you call that person a ruthless. Ruthless. Come from the word Ruth. Ruth, which means to have rahmanu, to be kind. So sometimes Chachamim tell us Hashem wants to give a reward to a person, but sometimes the reward is delayed. Hashem knows why, what the reasons are for this delay, but the reward is there. Hashem doesn't forget anything. The third lesson we are to learn is that about Hashgacha Pratit. Hashgacha Pratit means divine providence. That means that Hashem takes care of each and every Jew very carefully. And He'll do anything and everything to help a Jew. Hashem loves us so much, so much. The love that Hashem has, we say in Tefillah, Ahavat Olam Ahavtanu. Hashem, you love us a love that is forever. That's a love that doesn't end and doesn't diminish. So I want to tell you a story about a person, and here you see really divine providence, Hashgacha Pratit. It's an amazing story. I find it really amazing. So this story is about a young man who was about 16 years old at the time when it happened. And one day he lives in Yerushalayim, and one day he just wasn't feeling well. Things got worse and worse and worse, to the point where one night the parents had to take him to the hospital. After many tests, they came and told him, listen, there's nothing for us to do for you here. You need a new kidney. You have one kidney that is just about failing. You need to have a new kidney, a transplant. But for you, the best thing to do is to go to Belgium, get onto the list as a recipient from kidney donors, and wait. It could take a year and a half, who knows, but nothing before that. So he had no choice. The parents had to make arrangements. Where was he going to stay? Who was going to go with him? For how long? And he left yeshiva and he went to Belgium. Okay. So there in Belgium, he learned in yeshiva. He was taking his medicine. He really wasn't feeling too well. But he was just hoping and praying that Hashem should help him. Within the next 3 months, there was an incident that happened in the world that had nothing to do with him. There was a volcano, which I believe was in Italy. The volcano was just sending smoke, very heavy smoke, up into the air, to the point that all the airlines had to stop any flights that was passing over that volcano. It was just too dangerous for the flights. Okay. Within a couple of days, he gets a phone call. This young man gets a phone call. You have got to come right away. We have a kidney for you. What? Right away, quickly took a taxi, went to the hospital, and they started testing him, all kind of things, and they told him, really, this kidney was reserved for someone who was supposed to fly in from England. But because the flight was supposed to go over, that was the route of the flight, they were supposed to fly over the volcano, and since there's no flight, so the person cannot make it, and the kidney cannot be kept just anywhere. It has to be used right away. So it said, and you're the next match. So here you are, you have your kidney. This is just an unbelievable story. Look what Hashem did. He made a volcano smoke. He made the airlines stop their flights. All that for this young Jewish boy to go back home and go back to yeshiva. And for this young man to feel better, to take his kidney transplant, which is just really amazing. So this is what Hashgacha Pratit means. And we see here in Megilat Ruth, we're going to see how there is Hashgacha Pratit. As we go along, as we talk about it. So to our next question, why do we read Megilat Ruth on Shavuot? What connection is there between Matan Torah and Ruth? So Chachamim tell us, just as Ben Israel stood at Sinai and accepted the Torah, so too Ruth accepted exactly the same way, with a full heart, with happiness, she accepted the Torah. The story of Ruth and Boaz, who was her second husband, as we shall learn, teaches us that Nashim Tzidkaniyot, women who are righteous, are equal to Anashim Tzadikim. They're equal to men who are righteous. Even though women do not learn Torah, but they can achieve a very high level of spirituality by performing the mitzvot with zerizut and zehirut, as we have learned in Mesilat Yesharim, with being careful with what they do and doing things at the right time without pushing off. We read Megilat Ruth because Ruth is David's great-grandmother, as we have said, and David was born and he also died on Shavuot. So we learn about his origins. Ruth's name originally was not Ruth. Originally her name, she was from Moab, so her Moavi name was Galit. Ruth changed it from Galit to Ruth because she said to herself, a non-Jew has 7 mitzvot to keep. 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach, Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach. These are all non-Jews have only 7 mitzvot to keep. We have 613 mitzvot. So Ruth said, I am already obligated to keep the 7 mitzvot. So I need 606 mitzvot to complete the 613, just like every Jew. So she called herself Ruth. Why? Because in Gematria, Ruth equals to 606. Resh equals 200. Vav equals 6. And Tav equals 400. Altogether is 606 on the mitzvah that she took on to become a Jew. What is Ruth's background? Ruth was the daughter of the king of Moab. She was a princess, Eglon. Her sister Orpah, who also married Ruth's first husband's brother, right? So these two girls were princesses and they married two brothers. Now the question is, what did Eglon do to merit to have a daughter like Ruth? In Sefer Shoftim, we know that nothing happens for nowhere, for no reason. There has to be something. So here it is. In Sefer Shoftim, we learn about Ben Israel suffering from the people of Moab. The people of Moab were the enemies of Bnei Israel. And for 18 years, they made Bnei Israel suffer a lot. Bnei Israel could not take any more the suffering for 18 years. And they brought Amalek and they brought other nations to come and fight Bnei Israel. Bnei Israel cried so much and they prayed so much. Hashem decided it was time to save them. So Hashem chose Ehud ben Gera to be the shofet, to be the judge of Bnei Israel. And Hashem told Ehud to go to war against Moab and to kill the king of Moab. And Bnei Israel will win the war. He said, don't worry, I am with you. Bnei Israel had suffered too much under the rule of Eglon. So Ehud had to plan his war and how to kill the king. So, because he realized that if he kills the king first, once the leader is dead, it will be much harder for his army to be a winning army. It will be, without a leader, they'll be lost. And it will take them a lot longer to organize themselves and so on. And the Jews, it will have the Jews to win. So what did he do? First of all, we know that Ehud, he had a handicap. He had one arm shorter than the other. His right arm was shorter than the other. So where normally someone would keep his sword on his left side, right, using his right hand to pull it out, Ehud used his left hand to pull out his sword. So first of all, he made a sword of a certain length, and he put his sword on his right side. When he came to the palace of Eglon, they checked him, but they checked only his left side because that's where normally people put their sword. They did not bother checking his right side. So he went inside. The king actually happened to be at that moment, it was a hot day. The king was he had like a room where he would cool off. So he said, I'm coming to see the king. I have a message for the king. And when he went in, he said to the king, I have a message for you. So the king said, okay, everyone leave. And he got closer. Ehud got closer to the king. And Ehud looked at the king. The king was huge. He was very, very, very fat. Very fat. And Ehud was thinking to himself, I have to make him stand. I get a better chance of killing him if he is standing, not sitting. And so Ehud said, I have a message for you from Hashem. When Eglon heard this, he got up out of honor, out of respect for Hashem. He got up. And because he got up and he wasn't really ready for the fight or for anything, Ehud seized the moment and he killed him. He actually had to really dig his sword so deep inside because he was so fat, because the king was so fat. But he was able to kill him. And He did not pull out the sword. He just left it in and quickly cleaned himself, left the room, locked the room, and he left. He walked very calmly out of the palace. And it's only once he was far out of the palace, he started running, he got the army, and in the meantime, it took a while for the soldiers to realize that the king is dead, until they organized. That was it. The Jews won the war. So what's this got to do with Ruth? The fact that Eglon stood up in the honor of Hashem, to respect Hashem. Hashem said, as a reward, I will give you a daughter who is going to become Jewish. Not only that she's going to become Jewish, but she's going to bring, because of her, there's going to be very, very special neshama that's going to come to the world. And that neshama is the neshama of David HaMelech. Why did the neshama of David HaMelech, and later on we see of Mashiach, right? Why did it have to come through Ruth HaMoaviyah? We see when Hashem has a very special neshama to bring down, so Hashem has to bring it down in a way that the Yetzer Hara doesn't stop it. So how? For example, we know about Yehuda, who married Tamar, and when he married Tamar, the Yetzer Hara said, very good, nothing good is going to come out of this union. But that was a mistake, because then she had twins. Those twins, both of them were tzaddikim. One of them, his name was Zerach, the other one was Peretz. From Peretz came the line for David HaMelech. Boaz came from Peretz. Elimelech, who was a husband of Naomi, came from Peretz. Nachshon ben Aminadav was the grandson of Peretz. So we see that it's all started, the chains, the generations, until David. But now, David was supposed to come from Ruth. Hashem could not make Ruth be born as a Jew because her neshama was very special. And the neshama of David was very special. How to make this happen so that the Yetzer Hara doesn't spoil the plans. So Hashem had to make it that Eglon would have a daughter, that Naomi and Elimelech went to Moab to settle there, and we'll learn soon why they did that. And that Machlon, one of the sons of Naomi and Elimelech, married Ruth. When they all died and Elimelech died, and Ruth came back, Naomi came back home. Ruth refused to let Naomi go, and she said, I'm staying with you. Wherever you go, I go. Wherever you're going to be buried, I'll be buried. We'll learn some more later on. And that's how Hashem was able to bring the neshama of David HaMelech to this world, through tricking the Yetzer Hara. And we see this a few times, that the Yetzer Hara has to be tricked. So in this case, Hashem made Elimelech go down to Moab, and from it came Ruth HaMoaviyah, and later on David HaMelech. So now, who was Elimelech? Who was Naomi? Who was Boaz? Who are these people who are really the main characters of the Megillah? And Ruth, obviously, right? So for us to know who these people are, we have to go back a few generations to the time of Moshe and Aaron. Aaron was married to Elisheva, who was the sister of Nachshon ben Aminadav. So Aaron and Nachshon were brother-in-laws, but they were brother-in-laws twice, because the sister of Nachshon was the wife of Aaron, and the sister of Aaron, Miriam, married Aminadav. So who was Nachshon, who was the leader of Shevet Yehuda. And Nachshon is really quite famous. Why? Because when Ben Israel came to Yam Suf, and they were standing in front of Yam Suf, behind them the Mitzrayim were coming closer to attack Ben Israel. Ben Israel despaired. What are we going to do? We have nowhere to run. The sea is in front of us. Behind us are the Mitzrayim. And where? What? On each side of us is the desert. What are we going to do? Right? And Hashem said, Moshe started to pray. Hashem said, stop praying. It's not a moment. Now is the time for action. Tell Ben Israel to go into the sea. So Shevet Binyamin started to go to the sea. But then Nachshon, who was the leader of Shevet Yehuda, said, wait. Shevet Yehuda is the leader. So let us go in first. And Nachshon, as the leader, he went all the way in until the water reached his chin, and he didn't give up. He still had his emunah. Yes, we are going to be saved. And that's when Hashem split the sea. So Nachshon had 4 sons: Elimelech, Tov, Salmon, and the father of Naomi. We don't know his name. Elimelech married his niece, Naomi, and they settled in Bethlehem. Elimelech's family was very important. They were well known and very wealthy. They were called the Ephratim. Naomi and Elimelech had 2 sons, Machlon and Chilion. They were not their real names. Their real names were really Yoash and Saraf. Machlon, he, according to Chachamim, comes from the word Mehilah, which means forgiveness, because he married Ruth, and Ruth, once she was only looking to continue the family of her first husband, the family tree, and so she was able to get forgiveness for her husband. But Chilion, who had married Orpah, he was wiped out completely, because Orpah was not anywhere near Ruth, and Orpah just went back to her father's house. Elimelech and his sons were called Ephratim because they were distinguished people. They lived in Bethlehem, which was a very important city in Eretz Israel, in the territory of Yehuda. So for today's lesson, I am going to stop here. Like I said, there is a lot more to learn from Megilat Ruth. Be'ezrat Hashem, let's hope that we will cover as much as possible before Shavuot. I also would like to talk about Lag BaOmer, so there's a few things here. Tonight is actually the Elulah of Rabbi Meir, Baal HaNes. If you can light a candle, give a little bit of tzedakah, and say some Tehillim, and pray, because tonight is like the night of the Seder. It's Pesach Sheni also, and it's a very special night. So in the Zechut of Rabbi Meir, may Hashem listen to all our prayers. May Hashem bless us with bracha, hetzlacha, good health, zivugim, panasa tova, nachat. Hashem should guide us and protect us and guide us and take us all to Eretz Yisrael.